Um, Good morning, everybody. I'm Doug Newman with the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. We're really happy again today to be putting on this developer and contractor forum. We do this every year, right about this time every year, and it tends to be one of the more popular and one of the more valuable forums, information sessions that we have. Of course, for a number of years, that was an in-person session, and now we continue to be Zoom. I guess the silver lining of doing things virtually is that we tended to get some pretty good attendance for these things, and it's much easier to coordinate with somebody like Debbie Durham to make sure that she's able to give us her wisdom and be able to participate with us. So welcome to the virtual meeting here today. I'm going to do just to introduce our panelists here today, and then each of them will take some time to run through information. We'll save some time for questions at the very end. First off, I want to introduce, and really maybe none of these three people need much of an introduction, especially to the audience of developers and contractors that we have with us today. I think everybody is pretty familiar, but Ron Corbett. Ron does have a new title. Certainly all of you on the call know him, but just recently now, Vice President of Economic Development here at the Economic Alliance, leading all economic development projects, business attraction, business retention, business expansion projects. So Ron, thanks for being with us today. We also have Matt Rasmussen. Matt is the Program Director for Redevelopment Tax Credit Program for Brownfield and Grayfield sites. Matt is with the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Matt's well known to our staff here at the Economic Alliance, a real go-to guy for Brownfield, Grayfield in particular, but with a lot of the projects that we work through and try to get to the finish line, Matt is our go-to guy, and appreciate the relationship and all the success, all the projects that we've been able to work through with you, Matt. And we look forward to hearing from Matt here in just a couple of minutes. And right on cue, Debbie is back in the chair. I always enjoy introducing Debbie any chance that I get. And again, happy that virtual meetings give us maybe even more of a chance to hear from Debbie and to interact with Debbie. Although she has always, one of her hallmarks, one of her calling cards is the accessibility that she provides to economic development organizations like ours. I usually try to come up with some adjectives: the indomitable, the incomparable director, Debbie Durham. But sometimes words like that also make people seem inaccessible, and you're not that at all. You're always there for us. We appreciate your spirit, your passion, your knowledge about all that is economic development in the state of Iowa. And Debbie will have the anchor position on our panelists here today, and look forward to hearing from her. And just quickly note, and then I'm going to turn this over to Ron to speak first. But it's also a unique time of the year. We could do this at any time of the year. We like to get together annually to work through program changes. But having had a legislative session just ended, Debbie and I were bantering a little bit before people started coming on about Senate File 619. There's an awful lot in there. And there are some changes to the go-to programs for economic development. And in general, I think we would describe, and I believe Debbie will describe this as a very pro-business, pro-development. We got some good things in the go-to programs that really matter for driving economic growth in the state of Iowa. So we'll celebrate those things, and we'll learn a little bit more about those things today. Make sure that the developers and contractors that are on the call today know the tools that you have available to you and the resources that you have, not only with the Economic Alliance, but also with IEDA. So with that, I get to be quiet and listen and learn myself. We're going to start today's presentations with Ron Corbett. Ron, you're on.
All right. Thank you, Doug, and good morning, everybody. And again, welcome to both Debbie and Matt. joining our group today. And it's hard to believe that the calendar will be turning June next week, and we'll be on the end of the second quarter for 2021. 2020 for us was a super year when you look at the COVID issue, social unrest, and of course, locally, the derecho that we had to endure. But for our community, we had the most approved projects by the Iowa Department of Economic Authority. So I would encourage Debbie, if she would get one of those WWW or WWF belts, those big belts that those champions get. If she had one of those belts, our region would have won the award for the most projects approved by Debbie and her organization for 2020. And we would be carrying that belt around with us for 2021. The momentum of last year really has continued into 2021. We've already had 2 projects approved by Debbie's group. One was a smaller project a few months ago, Sadler Powertrain, and then just last Friday, DuPont, which is a company, it was a business attraction project 30 years ago. They had a nice merger with IFF, International Flavors and Fragrance, back in February. And within 100 days of that merger, the new company is investing $48 million in a new expansion project at the Cedar Rapids facility. This is significant for many reasons. One, it's the largest project so far this year approved by the state. 2, we've lost in the past with the competition for expansions from their Finland facility. And now to see the new owners making this type of investment within 100 days of the merger. You'll be hearing more and seeing more about this fantastic project as they celebrate their 30-year anniversary here in the Cedar Rapids area. Again, as I said, this was a business attraction project 30 years ago, was Gen Encore. And then Gen Encore changed to Danesco, and then Danesco from DuPont, and now DuPont to IFF. So even over those 30 years, there's been probably close to $700 million invested in that facility. The reason I bring up that as a case study, not just because it's recent, but we've made some changes here at the Economic Alliance. In the last 3 years, Mike Lucan, myself, and Jamie Toledo have really worked with existing businesses. And Brian Crow has been our ambassador. He's been our business attraction specialist through ICR Iowa, our joint venture between ICAD, which is the Iowa City Area Development Group, and the Economic Alliance. Unfortunately, Brian left to work with the Des Moines partnership and left a vacancy here at the Economic Alliance, and trying to fill that vacancy and not having any success over the last 13, 14 weeks. Doug decided that it might be a good idea to merge business attraction along with existing business together in one group. And so last week he made that announcement. And so myself, along with Mike Lucan and Jamie, will be handling both sides of economic development, existing business, along with business attraction. So we look forward to this new role and this new opportunity. And part of business attraction is working with the developers. And over the next 30 to 60 days, we'll be reaching out to you individually to really pick your brains a little bit on business attraction. We need to have a nice blend of existing businesses. You always have to watch the home front, make sure that your backyard is protected. But at the same time, we need to continue to diversify our economy and have new businesses come to our community. So building on the strengths of 2020 and some of the great accomplishments, some of them you know about, you see them on a daily basis when you drive on 380, you see the BAE construction. Just behind that is Worley, And of course, BioSpringer has been doing an expansion along with General Mills, some that you may not see on a day-to-day basis. That momentum is carried into 2021. So even though the year is, we're approaching the end of the second quarter, we're very excited for the continuation of 2021 economic development successes. Thank you, Doug.
Ron, thanks for getting us started. Matt, we're going to turn to you next. This is the real bread and butter of the program today. We really want to work through program details, be sure that the developers, contractors, and others on the call know what to expect out of these programs. And I know there's a couple of new wrinkles as well. So Matt, I'll turn the program over to you.
Very good. Thanks, Doug. I will just jump right in. I'm going to share my screen. I did create a brief PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully you can see that. Let's start it up.
Yep, we got it, Matt.
Okay, very good. I'll note on the agenda that they've allotted 15 minutes for a program update. I'm not going to take 15 minutes. I'm going to obviously save time for Director Durham. I think everyone's really here to hear what Director Durham has to say versus what I have to say regarding this program. I do have an update program. I'll give you a brief program update and then a real brief overview of the program, and then turn it over to Director Durham. So, as it stands right now, this program, the redevelopment tax credit program, is scheduled to sunset June 30th of this year. As was mentioned earlier, I think Doug and Ron probably both mentioned Senate File 619 passed the Iowa House, and the Senate's awaiting the governor's signature. Part of that, there's 28 different sections in that bill. One of those sections is regarding the redevelopment tax credit program. One of the changes that's proposed in that legislation would extend the program for another 10 years, so it would then sunset June 30th of 2031. It increases our annual allocation from 10 to 15 million. And there is, as Debbie mentioned earlier, I think when Debbie was on, it does allow us the opportunity to reallocate tax credits that do sometimes go unused. So that's really the brief program update. The program itself really will not change, even if these changes are eventually signed into law by the governor. So the program itself provides tax credits for redevelopment of distressed property. Qualifying properties are commercial, industrial, and abandoned public buildings. Every once in a while, I get a call about somebody that's got a project regarding a residential development, and a residential does not qualify. The tax credit is based on an owner's equity investment. What that means is if there's other forms of governmental financial assistance, we back that out, and you're not going to get a tax credit if you have other forms of governmental financial assistance that you're using to fund a project. You're not going to get a tax credit on spending those dollars, but on the owner's equity investment spent, you can get a tax credit on those dollars. The maximum right now is $1 million per project. It's 10% of the annual allocation. So if that annual allocation then goes up to 15 million, obviously the maximum then would be $1.5 million maximum per project. First question most people have is what's a brownfield, and the short version of the definition for brownfield, it's somewhat of a vague definition, but it's a project where there's real or perceived environmental challenges that negatively affect redevelopment of a property. The key word there is perceived. I mean, it can be simply a perception of a problem. It doesn't necessarily have to be real, but obviously that would help. Best example I give people is most small towns in Iowa have an old gas station that sits vacant for years, and nobody wants to touch it because they know that they're going to be responsible. If they buy that, they're going to be responsible for the cleanup when they have to pull the underground tanks out. So even if that's not the case, even if there's a perception, a site could qualify as a brownfield. A gray field is a site that typically has vacancy issues, and this is the Iowa Code definition. It's taken from the Iowa Code. Abandoned public building was added a few years ago, but it also obviously includes industrial or commercial property. the most common way a site qualifies as a gray field is if 30% or more of a building located on the property is available for occupancy has been vacant for at least 12 months. So if 30% or more of a property has been vacant for a year, then it would qualify as a gray field. And you can see the other criteria is there. If the assessed value has decreased by 25% or more, property is currently being used as a parking lot, or actually if the improvements on the property no longer exist, actually if there's a vacant lot and the building's been demolished, it could qualify as a gray field as well. So the applicants range from individuals to corporations. The only entities that are not eligible are governmental bodies. So cities, counties are not eligible applicants. The tax credit is transferable. It can be refundable to nonprofits if they establish that with the application. The tax credits are good for 5 years from the date they're issued. And again, they're based on the owner's equity investment only. Things that qualify are the purchase price, cleanup cost, and actual redevelopment costs, the bricks and mortar type costs. The only caveat there is the costs have to be incurred and paid after the IEDA board approval. So again, only those costs qualify after the board approval. A gray field can receive a 12% tax credit on qualifying costs. It can be up to 15% if it qualifies as a green development. And a brown field receives a 24% tax credit, and that can be up to 30% if it qualifies as a green development. And for a green development, basically, if you keep in mind the LEED standards, if it's LEED gold or better, it would qualify as green. The awards, it's competitive. Again, the annual allotment's $10 million. Only costs are incurred after board approval. We do require a cost certification by an independent Iowa CPA. So we have a completely neutral set of eyes that take a look at what is submitted to us to vouch for the applicant before we take a look at it regarding the qualifying costs after the project is done. Again, it's 10% of the annual allotment is the maximum. With the contract, once a project is approved, we enter into a contract and they're provided 30 months to complete a project. And it's not uncommon for projects, especially with the pandemic and the derecho, things that have caused some projects to be pushed back. It's possible to get a contract extension under certain circumstances. Let's see, the application, it's all online. The annual application period is the months of July and August. September 1 is the deadline. There's an advisory council. The Brownfield Advisory Council is the group that makes recommendations to IEDA board. So the advisory council scores all applications and makes recommendations to the board. The 3 scoring criteria are financial need, feasibility, and the overall quality of a project. Those are scored equally. I tell people all the time though, but if you think about it, financial need and feasibility somewhat tend to cancel each other out. So really, most of the time, it really does boil down to the overall quality of a project. Again, you can apply online only at taxcredit.iowa.gov. And this is the point where if you had any questions, you would ask those questions. I'd be more than happy to take any questions or wait until the end. I will be here through the end. That's the website regarding the program. And the application again is taxcredit.iowa.gov. My contact information is there. Feel free to give me a call anytime. I'm very easy to get a hold of. And also you can shoot me an email if you would so desire. And
Matt, thank you for that presentation. We appreciate that. And I'd reiterate that to all the folks on the call. Matt is very accessible, just like Director Durham is. And always feel free to use us as a conduit to these programs as well. Ron, Mike, Jamie, we've got a lot of folks here that have been through a lot of these application processes and have had great success and work very well with Matt and the whole team there. So anytime you have any question, there's never a dumb question. Let's always take a look. I think the greatest downfall or the greatest shame is when a project could have, would have, should have qualified and we failed to run it through the process. We failed to check. So don't ever assume hey, maybe this probably doesn't qualify, we're always happy to at least take a look and see if it might qualify. So I would reemphasize that. And great news on the expansion of the program. I know we've had great success and great luck using this program, but we've also had always a plethora of projects. Some projects that make it onto the award list, and some projects that don't. So hopefully, the expansion of the program allows us to get even a couple of additional projects funded each year and continue the economic growth and momentum and success here. So with that, Director Durham, we're going to turn this over to you. Take us through your comments, your thoughts on the specifics, but really a lot of the big picture stuff and the optimistic message that I know that you always have.
Great. Well, thank you, Doug. And Matt, great job on the presentation. And you are absolutely right. Matt is extremely accessible. The other part you may not know about Matt is he also chairs, as I'm sharing my screen here, he also leads the Community Development Board. So that's the board that deals with annexations and all of those issues. And so again, great job. And Ron, you know, we will definitely consider the WWW Championship Belt award going forward. And I really do appreciate your focus on existing business, because the last I looked in our portfolio, that's still about 84% of the deal flow that we do here at IEDA. Well, as you know, I talk fast. I go through a lot of information, and today will be no exception because there's a lot to cover. So we're going to go through this very quickly because I still want to leave time for Q&A. Again, part of this is just really standard. I open every presentation, no matter how many times I do it, because it's always that foundational philosophy of economic growth. It's about building a business culture in which our businesses can prosper. And it's about building communities in which our communities, create places where people want to live. And it's actually about, at the heart of everything we do, we're people centric. It's about doing all of this. And so our citizenry can thrive, right? That we can raise the standard of living for Iowans. And how do we do that? Well, we do that by playing to who we are. And in Iowa, that's these verticals: advanced manufacturing, bioscience, finance, insurance, information technology, which again, almost could be interchanged for innovation. And then our newest traded cluster focus, which is ed tech, which really is foundational to all of these other verticals. The next slides are just, and Doug, you're welcome to have the copy of this presentation if you want to share it, is just kind of like high level, what do these sectors mean to wealth creation, which is the other thing that's really different for our economic development policy versus many states. We are about creating wealth. And the one thing that's really changed on this is, I don't know if you've heard me say that, Iowa took over Connecticut's spot a few years ago. So we were like number 2, with Delaware still being number 1, with percentage of GDP from the insurance industry, the ecosystem. Today that we are absolutely number 1, an incredible story. And of course, that's also part of who you are in your region. You have a strong concentration of insurance and finance jobs there as well. Bioscience being probably the deepest and really extremely ripe for opportunities. And we'll talk about that moving forward. But this is who we are. We are a manufacturing powerhouse. It's still almost 17% of our GDP comes from manufacturing. Again, when you look at these sectors, and if you paying attention, they're only focusing on those jobs that really are above the average in the private sector, right? We're really looking for high quality jobs. And even nationwide, we're beginning to see in our sector where we're closing the gap. In the bio, we probably always were a little ahead. We certainly are in ed tech, but we're starting to see that closing the gap in manufacturing as well. And it shows that, ed techs pay 31% more than the national average. The other thing that's really interesting, and this $23 million is actually very low. We're going to be updating that because we saw a tremendous amount of investment, outside equity coming into Iowa in the ed tech space during COVID. And if you think, of course you would, right? Because it was alternative to how we normally deliver education. Very exciting what's happening. And that's been an area of weakness for Iowa on national rankings. And so whether it's in ed tech or whether it's in the bio front, the more money that we can bring in from the outside, it certainly helps us. All right. So again, that's who we are. But what are the trends in the economy that we really need to be paying attention to? Well, that's around diversity in workforce. It's about sustainability, automation, infrastructure. And for our discussion today, I'm going to take a very narrow focus of infrastructure. And then it's about uncertainty. So again, just some really high level, some things that should cause us to pause, right? That when you look at our very slow population growth and aging population in Iowa, still, but in this period of 10, from 10 to 2019, 44% of our population growth was from immigration, right? So again, something that the business community has really been paying attention to. Again, the same time frame that non-white population has increased by 32%. Iowa looks different. And how are our policies, both at the state and the community level, really taking that into account, right? And so diversity is going to be very, very important moving forward, as we're seeing in all of our organizations. The other thing that I think is interesting when you couple this, that 10,000 baby boomers a day nationally are retiring every day from the workforce. And I think COVID probably escalated that or accelerated that. It certainly did in our organization. So in essence, it's a place that we can't get there from here. We have more people on the unemployment roll than we have people to fill it. And that is the same today, right? We need to stop doing relief programs. We're done. We should be done with that, right? We're going to still help people on the eviction and foreclosure, but there's a point where we're done, which is why Governor Reynolds said we're not going to do the supplemental anymore for unemployment starting June 12th, because we have more jobs than people and we need to get people back to work. It's how our economy will actually work. Now's the time to quit doing relief and really truly open up our economy to let the natural forces of the economy work. The other one, this is dear to my heart, though. I mean, look at what happened during COVID. I said early on, my prediction, I had two predictions. One of them may be wrong. This one was actually right, that the segment of our population that will be left behind because of COVID is women, which is really, really discouraging. And I know, Tiffany, that, obviously with the Iowa Lead Change, I mean, these are statistics that's just, I mean, with all the work that they were doing about trying to close the pay grade. But not only do we see, they have left the workforce, right? They're not even being counted into the unemployment at this period of time. And why is that? So we're going to have to do a deeper dive into this to figure out why. I have to tell you, I think most of it's childcare, but I don't even think it's just childcare. If you look at women 45 to 54, now granted, people are waiting older to have babies. But if you look at that, I think that may have to do with the other end of the generation cycle, that they're taking care of aging parents, right? That couldn't go anywhere. And so we're going to have to really unpack what this means. But this is discouraging. And this is something that we need to be addressing. And childcare and all of that is part of that solution to this. This is also interesting. 32% of millennials experience extremely very negative impact on personal financials. Those that were financially stable are just checking out, right? They're like, we're going to travel the world. We're going to do something else. Is this really what we want? Because we also saw the other extreme to this is people were working so many hours remotely. There was like no end to the day, right? You don't stop at 5 because you're there all the time, 24/7. And so we saw this really kind of shift from some kind of workforce life balance. And then of course, though, we see opportunity. They're looking for new jobs, and they're looking for new jobs in other places. So that's an opportunity for us that we're going to talk about. And of course, this group of population was laid off more during the COVID, and not surprising, of course. So this is another statistic that is extremely concerning of what happened with COVID. Students are falling behind now because of COVID restrictions, may never catch up in their job skills and job prospective income. Now, this is nationally. I think Iowa will be in a better position because our schools were resilient. Many of them stayed open. This is, I think, really an indictment on those states that kept their education systems closed. All right, so what's happening in sustainability? Well, I love this. Jim Collins is not only a friend of mine, he's just a very, very, savvy CEO, and they have a huge commitment. But everything is now about sustainability and carbon footprints and how we navigate this world. So sustainability is both the cost of doing business, and it's key to actually attracting a workforce. And the reason for that is because consumers are making decisions based on corporate philosophy around the environment, around policies for hiring. And so you see this. And the reason we care, because, as of 2019, millennials overtook baby boomers as the largest segment of our working population, right? Again, they're going to pay more for products. Automation, though, is the game changer for us. Digitalization is expected to produce, double-digit boost to productivity increases we haven't seen like that for decades, right? We all know that there's a certain amount of our workday, certain amount of jobs in all of our communities, including, probably more so in rural Iowa, that are going to be automated in the years to come. And the problem is, if you don't get on the digital bandwagon right now, you're going to literally be left behind. Infrastructure. Again, this was something that was a wake-up call for us in COVID, even though our governor, both Branstad and now Reynolds, have continued to focus on it. We know you can run the world from wherever you are as long as you have connectivity. But it's not just having access, it's really at the speed in which you can move big data. And this access issue, we still have dry spots, and it's not just, or deserts, it's not just in rural, as we all like to just chalk it up to a rural issue. It's actually, we see that in some of our urban centers as well. The other thing is our housing stock, another thing holding back our growth. We have more housing demand than we have inventory. The inventory is very, very low that we see. We also see that too many of our citizens have this very large 38.6% is really very high they're burdened, right? They're, any kind of life unexpected event comes on, they are really strapped. And these are working people. We're not talking about people on unemployment here. These are Iowans. And then we also still see with our minority populations, this really gap in allowing home ownership. So things we need to be concerned about. The uncertainty, obviously we have certain amount. Last year it was derecho and COVID and all of this. But look, here's what's happening right now. The uncertainty is this participation rate that has exited the workforce. And what are we going to do to re-engage them and get them back in? What is that element or elements or issues that are keeping them out? Inflation. I'm extremely concerned about inflation. I mean, when you look at where building costs are right now, what is it? Somebody told me a 2x4 is $10 now or even higher. I mean, 70% increase in natural gas, and you just go through the commodities. And then of course we see what's happening at the gas pump. Right? Which is why I have to tell you, when I see things like shutting down, pipelines, development, it's very concerning to me. And, getting away from the path we were on of energy independence. These are just a few commodities. I could show you steel, I could show you natural gas, but this is what's happening. The question is it a bubble or is it here to stay? When you couple this with the massive amount of spending that's coming out of Washington, very, very concerning. And then you look at microchips. This is a funny story. I'm at home one afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, was just relaxing, having a glass of wine. The doorbell rings, and the neighbor, who I barely know, came in. Wanted to know if my husband would sell him his truck. Now, I said, well, no, because what would we do? Because we wouldn't be able to replace the truck right now. But I mean, that's just how things are working. Now, my husband, who's all about making money, says, well, maybe we should reconsider this. But so obviously these supply chain bottlenecks are huge. I mean, we just had a call a couple of weeks ago with someone in your service territory that's having issues with getting inputs in foreign because of container issues in Chicago. And I think we're able to help them in the short run, but we've got to resource these supply chains. And so what does that look like? But there's some great news coming out. Iowa ranked #1 for opportunity, most resilient state in the nation leading into COVID because of all the great work that was done by the legislature of being fiscally sound and coming out of it. So there are some great notes. So, all right, this is what it is, but what are our opportunities? Well, it's still around these traded clusters. It's all about the biosciences in these 4 sectors. And of course, the line of sight to your region for vaccines, immunotherapy, medical devices is really, really huge for you. Manufacturing 4.0, we just launched this, right? And we're so excited about it. And there were some great policies that came out of the legislature that's going to allow us to do some small grants for that small to medium-sized manufacturing, 75 employees and less, to help them into this transition to the digital world. And the thing I love about it, this is a great partnership with Cirrus, because Cirrus will have to do, and we're requiring everyone that wants a grant to do this simple assessment with Cirrus to say, do you understand what this manufacturing 4.0 journey looks like? And how does this investment actually get you there, right? But this is like the first step. The other thing that was absolutely huge, and again, Senator Dotson deserves so much credit, and the governor's office on this one, in the final hours of negotiation, they opened up accelerated depreciation. We've been, and Ron Corbett can tell you, we've been trying to do this for years. This is a big deal. Now, let me tell you, I gave up capacity for my tax credits to get this, because I think it is so significant, and it shouldn't be tied to whether you're doing an investment that elevates to a high quality jobs. It should be open to everyone. Great public policy. Very, very excited. Workforce tax credits. The urban center should be pleased. You're going to get your backlog taken care of. The 13 point some million dollars I have in backlog, we'll get those certificates out starting the first part of July when the new round opens. And we will be opening a new round. And so again, competitive, but very exciting. The problem that happened, the one thing that didn't get done, Doug, is they didn't change my cost cap. So your urban centers are still 100, 200,000. That's not acceptable. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to figure out how much cost I can throw out that's not going to count towards that 200,000, because I know where construction prices are. And the governor has said, look at the recovery money that she will have access to see if there's a way we can supplement this next round due to where construction cost is until we can figure this out with the legislature next session. Or there's been talk maybe trying to fix this in September at the special session. So we know it's a problem. But we're going to find, I guess we have plan A, plan B, and plan C, because we're going to figure it out, because I want to open a round as soon as we can. Of course, the state housing trust funds, we raised their cap from 3 to 7 million, part of the governor's housing omnibus bill. Very excited, because this is locally controlled. They don't have all the rules and regulations that we tend to have in government. Obviously this was a big thing for Grayfield, Brownfield, and Matt already talked about that. But just when you see projects like this Courtyard Marriott in Waterloo, and I could go to any community and show you these kind of things, including yours, they're phenomenal, right? You take these buildings that are off the tax rolls, or they're on the tax rolls at such small assessment, and you really see transformational growth. The Catalyst growth has actually been just really amazing. And so we do now have this new downtown loan guarantee program that we're going to partner with banks on, getting small community banks comfortable with doing some of these renovation projects. Very excited about that. So stay tuned, because that is coming as well. The one thing that we didn't get done, because, if you can imagine, it's a heavy lift on everything we did get done, is creative placemaking. We'll be coming forward next session. What does that look like? It's really a reinitiated Vision Iowa, but it's bigger than saying, we're not going to let you just build an event center or build a swimming pool in a park. We're going to find out, what are you doing in the park together? It's about people gathering, right? It's about adding vitality to something. So it's not a per se project, even though we're going to look for signature projects in this program. It's really about the entire space that surrounds it, and how does that become that gathering space for communities to come back together. So, I love this quote: placemaking is about turning a neighborhood, town, or city from a place you can't wait to get through, and we've all been to those communities, into one you never want to leave. It really just captures what we're trying to do. Broadband, significant investments. Again, special thanks to Governor Reynolds for leadership, and our legislators combined. This was one of those things with great support, bipartisan support. $100 million to a system. I mean, we know we need to look at a more sustainable funding, but it certainly was a great way to start. We'll wait and see what the feds do on their infrastructure bill. The next one is a child care opportunity. We're in the process of being part of, IWD's taking the lead of the child care task force. Very excited about what's coming out of that. So stay tuned. I think there's going to be some really, really big things things, maybe even something, we may even have something in there if we can actually figure out how to do it, that will like set us apart in the nation. So I'm just going to leave you with that. Now, if you hear me talk in 6 months and I never bring it up again, it means it didn't work. But we're proposing it right now. So we'll see what happens. But look at this. I mean, moving that increase the income threshold from 45,000 to 90,000, that's significant. And even for us to be able to say as part of our high quality jobs that if you're an employer and you play in this daycare field, whether it's you have a center or you're doing some kind of incentive for your employees, we can actually through high quality jobs, if you're doing something, give you higher incentives, kind of check the box as somebody, kind of like what we did, Matt showed with that green percentage increase with Grayfield, Brownfield. We're talking about doing the same thing. So really exciting there. Energy, this thing, I am very excited about what's happening in energy. The governor's going to be announcing a new carbon management study that's looking at not only nutrient reduction and sequestration, but all the way to how do you monetize this system, and looking at it as a very comprehensive system of how do we run a production economy, which is what we are, with a base load that is green and in partnership with our renewables, of course. So our energy team continues to hit it out of the park with all the thought leadership publications they're doing, the newest one being this energy storage. So if you've not spent time on IEDA's site, website, you need to, because, and particularly check out all these incredible reports, research projects that they're doing in the energy department. Very, very exciting stuff. All right, so the fun stuff, marketing. Right? We were all about, we kind of went away from our outward marketing, if you were outward facing marketing with This Is Iowa and stuff during COVID, to focus inward, right? To encourage our small businesses and people to get out. That's when we did the Iowans Unite. We are just, and it's these great videos about how businesses have pivoted during COVID to change their business plan. That's when we launched, the Shop Iowa site, but this community pride video contest. We're going to do a new mural, because I'm all about arts and culture with my good friend Chris Kramer. And so there's this opportunity to really reward communities. They're doing great things. Again, I already talked about the Shop Iowa, working with the partner, actually in your backyard, to basically give those small businesses that don't have a comfort level or an expertise level of really, kind of having them enter into this world of digital commerce, which everybody's going to have. We saw that was the resiliency card, the ones that were separated. So the state paid for this. We're continuing to pay for this. It was a very large investment. And we turned this around in about 60 days, didn't we, Stacy? This was unbelievable. I mean, this shows you the government can work at the speed of business. And sometimes we actually beat businesses, particularly corporations. So anyway, very fun stuff that we're doing. So now everything we do with the vertical traded clusters and manufacturing 4.0 and the bio study, you guys know this, we do the same thing for our research on marketing. So this is what we learned about workforce travel and housing. Because since we weren't doing a lot of marketing last year, it was a great time for us to pause and just to reevaluate. So we saw that young adults are open. Remember those millennials? I think it was 30% that says we are looking for something different. They're open to both new career opportunities and moving. They want affordability. They want economic vitality, options, right, in their area. So we are seeing that those that are making the exit, are interested in the South and the Midwest. And again, it's about cost of living and affordability. So when we talk about tax structure and those things, it does make a difference. The millennials are getting older, saying, okay, I don't want to live in the loft anymore. I actually maybe want some grass. I maybe want some distance from my neighbors. So we do know also that remote work is here to stay. These are some things that we're doing. HR recruitment tools, check it out. You should have Stacy do a presentation with you with much more in depth of what we're doing around. But if you guys remember when we did the pop-up in New York City a couple of years ago, Doug, you remember that. It went viral. It was just phenomenal. phenomenal. It was just kind of like a disruption in the market. How do you distinguish yourself when there's so much noise? Let me tell you, the new buzz activation thing is going to be fabulous. So I'll leave you with that. As far as tourism, it's going to be the year of the road trip, right? People are getting out and about. It's too bad gas prices are where they are, but it is what it is. But people are getting back on airplanes, which we love. And of course, you guys have a great airport there and a great airport manager, by the way. And then we're doing all these passes, digital passes, our Iowa State Park Pass, which won national awards, the Byway Pass, the Wine Pass, the Iowa Beer Passport. I'm still waiting, and I haven't seen it on the list yet, Stacy, but I'm sure it's coming. I'm waiting for the Whiskey Bourbon Patch. That's what I'm personally, not that I'm not willing to do these other things as well, but that will be my all-time favorite. And that's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
The whiskey bourbon patch will definitely bring you right here to the corridor, Debbie. We've got a lot to brag about.
I know, exactly. So anyway, so that's it.
Great. What an incredible amount of information. As you said, you packed an awful lot in there. Reminder to the participants that we'll get access. We are recording this, and we'll also get access to that presentation. So if you couldn't take notes fast enough, we'll be sure to capture that for you. Hey, Jamie has changed the settings so that any of you can ask a question directly. You'll have to unmute yourself and do that. I'd be happy, though, if you want to put them in the chat or the Q&A. I'd be happy to facilitate and ask questions as well. Certainly of Debbie, if you do have questions for Matt or Ron, feel free to share those as well. And many of you on the call know that I can certainly ask questions myself for the rest of the time. So if you don't have questions, I certainly am interested in a number of things, and we can carry this on. But I would point out, Debbie, the names. I know almost all the names on the participant list. Several developers that have used workforce housing tax credits, several brownfield projects represented here. I see Jody from Shop Iowa on the call today. I see both North and South Corridor people. So the Ed Tech and Med Tech that ICAD has really been focused on is represented on the call today. And I hope that a couple people will, and we've got broadband folks as well. So a pretty sophisticated expert participant list here today. And I hope a couple people will chime in with questions so that it's not just me asking questions. So before I start, I am going to pause for a couple seconds and see if somebody will be brave enough to jump in with a question, please.
Doug, this is Kelly Hayworth.
Kelly, go ahead.
Debbie, I just appreciate you bringing up under the workforce housing tax credits, the $200,000 limit, because that's really critical. We're doing some affordable housing projects here, and you just really can't get it under that with all of the additional costs. So anything that you can do to change that limit or take the cost out, I think is extremely important to make these projects work.
Well, Kelly, it's always good to hear from you. You guys are doing some great things over there in Coralville. And yes, like I said, we have plan A, plan B, plan C. The easiest one is to figure out what cost I can actually throw out. The second one is to see if I can somehow, subsidize the projects coming forward during this huge spike in construction commodity prices with some kind of cash infusion. That's not easy to do because I can't put it into a tax credit program. That's prohibited by rules. And then, the third is if we could actually fix it back in at the special session when they have to come back in September for redistricting. That's certainly a governor's call. That's not something that I can decide. And part of the reason it broke down, it's not that that the legislature wasn't aware of what's happening in the industry. It really came back to, making sure that we're delivering to the population we're delivering on. And how do you, if you just leave it up to the IEDA board to make this based on an economic analysis every year, which is what I asked for, what are you going to tie it to? And believe it or not, there's not a real easy, because I talked to the state economist, Robin, about this in revenue. There's not like one index you can go to. And if we created a housing index as a state, it's much more complicated than even because my philosophy is how hard can this be, really? I mean, surely we can do this, and we can. It's just going to be complicated. And so there was just not a comfort level with the legislature. I think they thought they were giving me a little too much control of how we're going to do this. So it's not that they're not open, and we will eventually get it fixed. It's just that, you know, it just happens. So we're going to try to find a way to move forward with the round, with trying to do one of the first two items and then come back next year with a real clear plan of how we're going to do that. One of the things we looked at is really looking at, you know, is it AMI, you know, basically your income index, because, you know, our affordable things go up to 80%. Maybe what we say is workforce is 80 to 150, 175. What does that look like? Because first of all, we have to make sure that we're building homes that people can afford, right? So that's also the issue of concern. If you identify the income, then you could actually even stagger this to where it's different in your region than it is in Woodbine, for instance, right? Which actually would be a very, very cool way to do it. We just have to run some sampling of what that would look like. So yes, Kelly, we absolutely agree. And before we open a round, we'll have an answer, because we can't open a new round to you all until we figure out what we're going to do with this, because otherwise no one's going to come forward because they can't meet the cost cap.
Anybody else want to chime in with a question?
Hey, Doug,
Yeah, Dale, go ahead.
it was nice to see Kelly. I saw Kelly down in Coralville the other day, walking around Iowa River Landing, and hard to believe that that looks as good as it does, keeping in mind what it looked like 20 years ago. But
Correct.
Kelly, yeah, amazing. Debbie, my question for you is real simple. You've got this great program, Opportunity Zones, and we've been beating our head up against the wall trying to find investors in that program. It seems like they'll invest in Chicago or Kansas City, but they skip over Iowa. The people who really know about where equity is and where people with capital gains are banks. And is there, just a suggestion, a way to facilitate a discussion, you know, with your department and the, you know, the banking division of the Iowa Commerce Department, or just, you know, the banking industry per se, and just say, hey guys, here's a great program that more people should take advantage of, simply because I think a lot of people still don't know about it.
You know, first of all, Dale, you are absolutely right. And, you know, I've struggled with this whole opportunity zone because and you've heard me say this, I think it's actually really, really good tax public
Easy.
policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem, I think, there's two folds, and we are seeing projects. I know the Drake neighborhood has had some, you know, one issue is we don't know what's being invested here because there's no registry for it, which is unfortunate. So unless it's a project that we happen to be participating in anyway, or someone tells me, I don't know. The second piece is that timeline. You know, what's this administration going to do with it? Because unless you bolster that out, you don't get the full benefit of that. However, talking with Jeff, you know, our banking commissioner, we work very well together. In fact, reminds me, I owe him a big thank you. He saved our rear ends a little bit in the legislature on a bill. So, but I can talk to Jeff about what his thoughts are about, you know, and, you know, how we could make this more appealing. One thing that we're doing is we are adding, because we do have an operating zone website that really we spend a lot of money doing that, you know, zeroes in on here's what it is. And so investors can look at that. The second thing that we are doing is the new market tax credit program. You know, there seems to be some, maybe there's going to be some policy changes on that, making it a little more robust. So we are now putting on our lowest site and our certified sites of any of our properties that are located. We already had done it for opportunity zones, Dale, but we're also doing it now for new market tax credits. But great idea. And again, I owe Mr. Jeff a big thank you. So I will basically do that and ask him about this yet this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Who's next with a question for Debbie or for Matt or for Ron? Debbie, as people collect their thoughts, I do want to ask you about angel investor innovation tax credits. One of the one of the disappointments of the session. Thoughts on that? What happened? How do we come back at that? How do we eventually get successful? Again, on something that kind of seems like no-brainer, great public policy. We were frustrated on that one. We've talked about a bunch of the wins and a bunch of really good stuff that happened this session. But what happened there, and how do we do it differently and better next time?
Well, Doug, I don't think anyone was more disappointed than myself, and so much disappointed that I think our legislative liaison suggested that it was not helpful for me to be up there anymore. Because, I kind of feel like you, the policy speaks for itself. It's great public policy. We have it right. It's that capacity issue like brownfield, like workforce that we're adding capacity to. We can show the return on investment. We can show you every economic model you want out there. The problem is none of that matters, because it's politics, and this thing's ingrained in politics at a leadership level. And basically, I don't know how to fix it. I'm going to be very candid. I don't know how to do it, but I will tell you what I am going to do. And, now the attorneys are looking at this to see if I even have an authority. I think I'm going to shut it down, because I'm developing a wait list like we did with workforce housing before we, stopped that and then moved it to a competitive program, because it is not good fiscal policy as a director for me to be seeing these liabilities against the state being racked up when the state knows it and the policymakers aren't doing anything about it. So the strategy's got to change. And I guess I'm open for ideas, but I think what's going to have to change is the legislators are going to have to start hearing from these investors, because these investors will take their money and put it somewhere else, right? And that's unfortunate, because these are at that very entry level investment on the angel investing side. The banks do not want to play. They're not going to play, right? It's risky. These people are taking the risk with their wealth. Why would we not want to support that? So I don't know, but if I can, I'm going to shut it down, and maybe that sends a signal to say, policymakers, we've got to fix it. But I mean, I just, that's the true issue. And it's not even, it really doesn't even involve me at this point, right? It doesn't involve us. And it's just so unfortunate when you see policy really being taken hostage for something that has nothing to do with the policy.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Our thoughts exactly. So I can hear the frustration in your voice.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
anybody else with a question here today? I got a couple more otherwise, and we don't have to keep you for the entire time. We'll certainly give back the gift of time, because you don't want to hear me talk for too long. But let me pause and just encourage anybody else to voice a question for any of our panelists here today. Debbie, how is work with IFA going? Does that feel like one job to you? Does it feel like two very integrated and cross-functional jobs? Does it feel like two very separate jobs? And what does the near future look like for your leadership of both of those departments that are very important to the programs that are critical to everybody on the call today?
Well, first of all, it doesn't feel like two jobs for me. It feels like one job, and it just depends on how do you solve a problem? Do you use IEDA resources and abilities that they have, or do you use the resources and abilities on the IFA side? The thing is that, when you come into our space now, you don't know who's IFA and who's IEDA. We are all based on basically business units. So for instance, CDBG, Main Street, all those community development, Empower Rural Iowa, those community development individuals and programs are housed with the IFA, housing tax credit program and so on. And you're really now beginning to see them come together and solve problems. And so even, I don't know if you noticed, but we got this, which really was authorizing ability for me to set up a disaster program for housing, because we know disasters going to happen that are outside the legislative session, right? And the ability, what they did is said that IFA and IEDA can both move money into this. So you can take joint resources depending on who's got the financial wherewithal to do it into that. The unfortunate part of this, Doug, is that we were only here for 4 months together, right? Physically together. before COVID and everyone went home. And so even though we use team platforms and talk to everybody on Zoom, it is not the same. And so that's why I'm saying everybody's going to come back July 1st. We'll certainly work as we always have with flexibility. But I am, first and foremost, I believe in corporate culture. I'm a big, if nothing else, we cannot be productive and we can't hit the wins out of the park the way we're doing if we do not have a workforce that is highly engaged and feels valued and invested in. And the only way we do that is culture. So my new CEO is actually cultural. His title is, Chief Operating / Cultural Officer. So I am all about that. So people are coming back because so that we can begin, and it's already happening now that, we have live activity in the building. People are huddled together because we built the whole space based on collaboration and creative thinking. And so, yeah, I think in the next year, you're going to just see from the people coming in that are asking us to solve problems, you're going to know it will be a joint team as it is. So I'm very, very excited. And this should be a permanent fix. This is not about Debbie Durham. This should be an ongoing fix that we'll be talking about with the legislature of making it permanent in code, that there should be one director of both IEDA and IFA long after Debbie Durham is gone.
Good. Dale, I saw you come off of mute. Do you have one more question?
Nope.
Nope, that was just accidental. Okay, we could hear you thinking. So
Yeah.
Anybody else have another question? Debbie, I would finish with just a couple things. Then, first of all, we're thrilled to have Pankaj Munga on your board. We'll continue to send our best and our brightest your way so that you can use them as you need.
He's a great addition to the board. Not only does he just serve on the board, but he also is part of the whole innovation. So he's got the TTC, which is those, Propel awards and those proof of commercialization. And of course, he walks that walk, right? And so it is awesome having him on the board. He's very engaged. And yeah, we will continue to take people from your area. And of course, we've got Amy Reesner from your area that's on the IFA board as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So we stay really well connected through them as well. So thanks. Pankaj also serves on the Economic Alliance board, and we rely on him a lot. I know we've got a pretty bold and innovative innovation district application in front of you. We're of course rooting for that, and then as another cycle of brownfields comes upon us, I hope that we see projects from several people here that are on the call, and you continue to see economic activity from here in Cedar Rapids and throughout the Iowa City Cedar Rapids corridor. So thanks for all that you do. Matt Rasmussen, thank you for your technical expertise. Thanks for the great staff-to-staff relationship that we have with you, and thanks for your time today. Ron, I know you're just outside my office here, but thanks to you. And I do want everybody on the call to know what a great leader Ron is. And I think this reorganization from within really helps simplify and clarify the work that we do in economic development. So put Ron Corbett on your speed dial. And when you've got an expansion project, retention project, anything that's going to relate to economic growth, we want to know about it. We want to do all that we can to help you. And Debbie, if you've got any last words, I'll give those to you, and then we'll adjourn.
Well, first of all, it's always a pleasure to join you. And, we have no travel restrictions other than international right now. So anytime you want me to come and visit, I'm always ready to go. I'm enjoying getting back out in the communities. And so thank you for what you do. You guys really did have a great year. And actually, all economic development is local. We're just here to partner with you.
Very good. Thanks to everybody for participating. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. And we'll continue to try to make the economy rock. See you later.
Thanks, Doug.
See y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Director Durham.